Joe White is up next, and he's telling a story which I think he's forgotten this, but he first heard it off me. So he is duty bound to do a very good job with it. I know he will. Please give a big round of applause. Joe White!
There was once a time that the mere mortals on earth were bathed in sun all year round. Now, wouldn't that be a fine thing? Instead of now, we're just drenched day after day after day. And the reason we are drenched day after day after day is because of Demeter, her daughter Persephone, and Hades of the underworld. For Demeter was the goddess of harvest. Her hair looked as though it was ripe crop, and she was always blossoming. And she made sure that every day people could go and pick fruit, could harvest their wheat, and could just eat and eat and eat. And her daughter Persephone did help her out quite often, and Persephone was a beautiful girl. She had long, flowing hair, and she caught the eye of many a gentleman, and she caught the eye of Hades of the underworld. And Hades went up to his brother Zeus to ask if he could marry Persephone. Well, Zeus didn't really want to offend his brother by saying no, but he knew that Demeter would never allow it. And he sort of just sidestepped the question and talked about a meal that they could have for next week. Well, Hades went back down to the underworld thinking, well, he was never told no. And when he saw Persephone just by the earth, within reaching distance, he couldn't resist but to grab her and take her down to the underworld with him. But when he did this, Demeter cried. She forgot her godly duties to make sure that the harvest was ready, because she was looking for her daughter. Her beloved daughter had gone, vanished. And soon all the crops began to shrivel up. There were no fruits to pick, and man began to starve. And well, there came a time when she heard through the house of rumour that Hades had taken her beloved daughter. And so she went to Zeus and said that something must happen. Persephone must come back to the earth and live with her mother. And all of the other gods did agree that this should happen. And Zeus sidestepped the question again and agreed that as long as Persephone hadn't eaten anything from the underworld, she would be able to return to her mother. But if anything had touched those lips, she would be down there for the rest of her life. And so Demeter went down through the earth to the underworld, and she landed with a... And she looked and she saw Hades. And just behind Hades, crouching, kneeling on the floor, she saw her daughter. And she cried out for her, and as her daughter turned around, she saw red trickling down her front. And Demeter fell to the ground, because just behind Persephone there were dead bodies, one with its top of the head cut off and its brains exposed. And Demeter thought that Persephone had been eating this brain, and that was what the red down her front was. But then when she looked closer, she saw that Persephone had a pomegranate in her hand. And she'd eaten 6 seeds from the pomegranate. But she'd eaten something from the underworld. She'd be lost. But Demeter was not giving up that easily. And she went back to the gods and explained what had happened. And they made a bargain with Hades that for each of the seeds that Persephone had eaten, she would spend that many months of the year in the underworld, and for the rest of the time she could live with her mother. And so that was how it was. Every spring, when Persephone rises to the earth, and pleases her mother with her presence. Demeter remembers to make sure harvest will be ready, and that brings spring. But 6 months later, when Persephone is taken from her mother and goes to the underworld, Demeter forgets her godly duties, and that brings autumn and winter. And now you know why we have this constant rain, and we are not bathed in sun all the time. Just remember to blame Hades.